We seem to have kind of stabilized on numbers there. So, Liz, do you want to kind of kick us off and then pass to whoever makes sense after you?
Okay, cool. Hi, welcome everyone. So my name's Liz Hook. I'm here as a bit of an interloper because I'm actually a people doctor, not an animal doctor, but I look after the vet students at Homerton through their first 3 years and then the clinical medical students in high years. So I'm really pleased to see you all here, and this is a fantastic opportunity for you to just ask any questions that you would like to. You can pop them in the Q&A as we go through, so you don't have to save them all up till the end. In particular, Elise will introduce herself in a minute, but there are loads of questions that I think you may wish to ask, which she will be absolutely ideally placed to ask for you. So you've got a captive audience amongst us, so take the opportunity to ask anything. And I'm really delighted that you're interested in vet med in Cambridge in general, but also very specifically in Homerton, which we think is the best place to do vet med in Cambridge. So I will pass the baton on, as I do between year 3 and year 4, to my colleague Rachel.
Hi guys, just to reiterate what Liz has said, we're absolutely delighted you're joining us this evening. Thanks so much for giving up your time. I appreciate how busy you all are. So my name's Rachel. I'm the Director of Studies for Clinical Veterinary Medicine. So for your clinical years, which are 4th, 5th and 6th year, I'll be looking after you along with your vet school clinical supervisor. We'll talk a little bit more about the different roles of everyone within the collegiate system later on in the presentation, so don't worry too much about that. I am a vet in practice. I was an equine vet and advanced veterinary practitioner for 6 years, and then last year made the transition over to wildlife. So I spend most of my time with hedgehogs, to be honest, but a lot of seals, birds of prey, and whatever comes in the door, really. So I will chat to you a little bit more about the clinical med side, and we'll do a little sort of sample of what a clinical supervision looks like at Cambridge. And I will hand you over to our wonderful Elise, who is one of our current cohort at the minute, who, as Liz said, is very well placed to answer any of your more student-centric questions. So I hope you make use of our wonderful Elise.
Hello. So as we mentioned, I'm Elise. I'm a student at Homerton. I'm a second year vet going into my 3rd year now. So all very exciting stuff. We'll get into kind of will we get into the structure of the course? Yeah. So I'm going into my intercalated year. So next year I'll be specialising in pathology. So kind of disease, all fun stuff like that. So I'm happy to answer any questions about like the student side of vet school, Homerton, Cambridge, just anything you want to know.
Brilliant. Thank you, Elise. And I'm here as the kind of the least related person in some ways to vet med. I'm the admissions tutor who looks after veterinary medicine. My background is in chemistry, so we've got some overlap there. So I'm often involved in veterinary medicine interviews as well, in which I learn many fascinating things that I wouldn't know any other way. It's fascinating. The way that this talk is going to be structured is I'm going to start off by giving you a little introduction to the university and to Homerton College. And then I'm going to pass over to Liz and Rachel, and then we'll make sure there's time for a Q&A at the end. Because it's a webinar, firstly, I just have to apologise because I really hate webinars because I find it very difficult not to be able to see everyone's faces and respond to you. So hopefully we can kind of give you information that's useful, but please do feedback to us. The chat function, I think, won't work and you will have to use the Q&A, but you can put anything in there as we go through. Okay, so I shall start by sharing my screen, and I'm going to share this one, hopefully. If someone could just confirm that they can see that presentation. Ooh. Rachel, can you give me a thumbs up? Perfect, great. So, welcome along to Homerton, and I'm going to start off with thinking about why consider Cambridge in a kind of general sense. Cambridge is a great university to study at. There are loads of good reasons, and I think the bullet points here kind of sum up 3 major ones. The education really is world class in terms of the education that you get. You will study alongside people who really, really care about their subjects, who are really interested both within your subject, but you'll also live with people who are studying other subjects. So you often kind of live on a corridor with a shared kitchen. You might be with some other vet med students, but also some engineers and some mathematicians and someone studying modern languages. And these are all people who really care passionately about their subjects. And so it's a great place to come just to be in that world of education and to learn the subject that you really care about. The education is a really demanding one. We ask a lot of people at Cambridge, and we recognise that that is quite demanding of people. But to make sure that that's all possible, we also think about the support that's in place, and it's a really, really supportive environment. Coming to Cambridge means being part of a college. Homerton is the college that we're from, and those colleges are there to be your base and your home whilst you're in Cambridge. And it's kind of, you go out to the faculty, the departments to do your study, and then you come back home to Homerton, to your college, at the end of the day. And I'll talk a bit later about some of the support that's available, but that support is both academic. There's a lot of kind of support we can put in place if anyone is struggling academically, but also pastoral. So we recognise that sometimes things happen in life that might affect your studies or might just affect your well-being, and we've got support in place to work with you on that as well. We also believe that it's really important that your student experience isn't just the course that you're studying. Vet Med is an amazing course. You learn so many things, as I find out just through the interviews, but we really strongly believe that your student experience as a whole needs to be fulfilling. And one of the conversations I have with all my new dossiers when they come to me, or indeed when they're continuing with me, is, so what else are you going to do this year? As well as your studies, as well as studying vet med, what else are you going to do? And there's a whole range of activities that you can do, both in college, but also in the university more broadly. And pretty much any club or society that you could want to be part of will exist. And if it doesn't, there will be someone who can help you get it started. So within college, there are sports clubs. There's coffee club, where you can just go and drink coffee together in the morning and kind of have a chat with people, which is great for getting students from different year groups to know each other and kind of have that time just to check in with each other in the morning before the academic day starts. There's also drama. There's a massive amount of music that goes on within college. And then there are also things outside of college, again, music, sport, drama, but other things as well. So it's definitely worth having a think about, well, what would I like to try whilst I'm at university? What am I interested in having a go at? Because it's such a great opportunity to come and do that. And as a director of studies, I really firmly believe that you will do better in your studies if you have some other activity going on alongside that as well. It gives you structure, gives you time to, and it gives you an outlet to kind of, if you've had quite a difficult day, if you've got an essay that's due in and you just have to get it done because you're going to go and play football and you can't let everyone down, that's really healthy and really good for you. It's worth, I think, just having a little chat about what the role of the college is versus the university, because it's a slightly odd setup where we've got Cambridge University and then we've got these colleges and they're kind of together and they're kind of not. But what you've got at the side here, this picture is a picture of Homerton College. This is our old Great Hall with the round window here. And then at the side, you can see this is the outdoor area outside our college bar. And it looked very like this today. It was quite a sort of slightly overcast day. This ginkgo tree is a bit more in leaf now, but it's a beautiful environment to be in and to study in. And the colleges have a really important role. They admit students. So when you apply to Cambridge, you apply, there's two ways to do it. You can either apply as an open application or to a specific college. If you're applying as an open application, an algorithm on a computer somewhere takes all of the open allocations and sends you to a college, and then you're treated by that college as if you had applied to them in the first place. There's no difference. But it's definitely worth, when you're thinking about applying, trying to visit the colleges, come and talk to the students. You've got Elise here to talk to, that's brilliant, and get a feeling for what the colleges are like. And we had loads of visitors in quite recently, and it was really great to see people looking around and enjoying meeting the students. Once you're admitted to the university, it doesn't actually matter in terms of the course structure that you're following, which college you've been admitted to, because the university, the departments, the faculties in the university set the course. They determine what's in the course, which modules you take, which practicals there are. They organise the lectures, seminars, practicals, everything like that. And they also set and mark the exams. So whichever college you attend, you set the same exams and you're all assessed in the same way. What the college does, though, is give you your base. It provides academic and pastoral care, and that's through someone called a Director of Studies and a tutor. So Liz and Rachel are your Director of Studies for VetMed, and they look after your kind of academic, the academic side of your time at Cambridge. And then you'd also have a tutor who's someone who's there really to look after the pastoral side, your well-being. If you have any financial or health concerns, they would be a person to go to. And it's a lovely little sort of triangle with you, your DOS and your tutor all working together to make sure that you have the best journey you can through the course. The colleges also are where you'll live, where you'll eat, where you'll have friends. Initially, you'll make friends from other colleges as well, but you'll often have a really good, close friendship group in college. And they are involved in your teaching in that they organise the small group teaching. And that's something that Liz and Rach, I'm sure, will talk about later on. And there are facilities within college, and I'll talk a bit about those in a second as well. So when you're thinking about a college that will work for you, it's thinking about that small group teaching, and it's also thinking about the environment that you're in. And so don't worry too much about exactly what the course is in terms of choosing a college, because that's going to be similar wherever you are. In terms of Homerton, you've got some pictures here. We've got kind of words, and I'll talk about those as well, but I want to talk to you about the pictures first. This is another view of our old Great Hall outside. And then down here, we've got the inside where it's all been set out for a dinner. That's the same circular window up there. And this is a space that's used in college for a whole range of different things. So it's used for dining like this. It's also used for music concerts and for playing badminton. And we had the College Wellbeing Fair in here recently, and poster presentations and samba dancing. There's a whole range of activities that go on. And it's great to have this space that can be used for all of these different things. And if you have come to visit Homerton, this is probably where you came in. As well as that, this is our old dining hall. We've got a new dining hall, which is this building that looks like a kind of letter M, which was opened relatively recently. And I think this shows quite nicely this first point. We combine the old and the new. Homerton is the newest college in Cambridge, but it still has all of the Cambridge traditions. So you matriculate, you'll have matriculation dinner, graduation still happens at the Senate House. There's still a sort of slightly odd Latin speaking graduation that goes on, which is a brilliant experience to go through. But as well as that, we look forwards, and we're forwards thinking about the teaching and learning that goes on, and about our buildings that we've got. So sustainability was a really important part of the design of this new dining hall. And I think that just shows how we try and bring these two things together. It's also important to me, certainly, and to a lot of the students we've got, that Homerton has a lot of space. We've got a lot of outdoor space that can be used. So there's a picture here in the middle, which is the orchard. We've got some students who may be having a supervision or maybe relaxing, I'm not sure which, down in our orchard. And we've got a lot of green space in the college, which is something I think we're really lucky to have. We've also got, here are some students who are dressed up for formal hall, I would guess. They've got their gowns on. And the picture with the bike here is really here just to remind me to say that although sometimes people worry that Homerton's a really long way from everything, actually Cambridge is a really, really small city. And so to get anywhere in Cambridge on a bike does not take that long. And if you're not keen on cycling, there's a bus stop just outside college, and there's a bus that will take you to most of the sites that you could need to access really frequently. So actually, we are really well connected into those different places. It's also, I also want to mention the community that we have. I think we often get in talks like this asked, what do you like most about Homerton? And certainly for me, it is the people that I work with, and that's the other academics and staff who work within the college, but also all of the students we have. And we really do have a really diverse college community in almost every kind of metric that you could use. And I think that's something that is really important to us. We want to be somewhere that welcomes and values people from a whole range of different backgrounds, providing that Cambridge is the right place for them. And we think that they will do really well there. The other thing that I want to mention on this slide is the idea that actually we aren't just about getting a good grade in a degree. Now, that is really important. Cambridge, academically, you're going to work hard, you're going to achieve that degree. But as a college, and if you get to see our principal talking at any point, this will be that the main point that he makes is committed to making a positive impact on the world. And Simon, who's the principal, talks about the fact that one of the things that we have is a responsibility to take our degree, learn all the things that we've come to learn, and then think about, well, how can I take that and how can I use that to have the most positive impact I can on the world? And there are many, many different ways to think about that. One of the ways we have within Homerton of thinking about that is this Changemakers programme, which is a co-curricular development program that can run alongside your degree, that is free to all students to access, and you can access as much or as little as you want. But for example, they provide mentoring for students. There are funding for startups can come from that. There are residential trips. So a whole range of different opportunities that are there to support your development alongside your degree. This is Simon Look. He's looking very happy by the door, but I think there are a few points here that it's really important to make. The facilities that we've got a gym on site, we've got sports grounds that are linked. They're just a little way off, really state-of-the-art sports grounds. We've got an amazing library, and with that, some really amazing librarians who have such a range of skills that they are willing to share with students. So they run various skills sessions on referencing and critical reading, but are also there just to help and support in whichever way is possible. We've got a lovely cafe and kind of work cafe space that people have, the student bar and the student union. The Homerton Union of Students has lots of students who are there to represent all of the students who are part of the college, and they do that through running various events and things like that, but also through sitting on committees in college and being part of the decision-making processes in college. And I think it's really important to have that student voice very strongly coming into decisions that are made in college. We've also got some of the cheapest accommodation in Cambridge, and lots of it, there we are, now boasts more ensuite rooms with internet access than any other college in Cambridge. I think that is still true. I'm not promising it is, but I think it is still true. In terms of financial support, because that can be a big concern for people coming to university, I know university can be a really big financial decision. There are various grants and scholarships, particularly for UK, so home students who are applying from various widening participation backgrounds. There will be So there may be some support that is accessible there. There are music and travel grants, for example. If you've always wanted to play the cello and you've never been able to afford the lessons, that's something that the college can often help with. There are also internship grants. So if during the summer holiday, for example, you want to undertake an internship and it's not paid or it's not paid terribly well, then the college can often support that in terms of either providing accommodation or money for accommodation. And then there are hardship funds for unexpected hardship that comes up. If finances are something that is a real concern for you, please do reach out to our admissions office or the admissions office of the colleges you're interested in to talk to them about what the possibilities are there. The application process, if you are thinking of applying in the next academic year, that's great. And you need to kind of start making some decisions. You need to choose your course and then either choose a college or an open application. And as I said, it really doesn't matter which of those you do. You'll need to check admissions test arrangements. And I think again that Liz and Rachel will probably mention this, but there is an admissions assessment for veterinary medicine, which you are responsible for signing up for and taking. And you need to get on to finding out about that if you haven't already pretty soon, and especially if you have any access requirements. So if you get extra time in exams or anything like that, you are able to have all of those access requirements in the admissions assessments, but it does mean there's a slightly earlier deadline, so you just need to be aware of that. And then you'll be doing things like writing personal statements and filling in your UCAS application. And the deadline for that, generally 15th of October. Please, though, do listen to your school. They will probably give you an earlier deadline, and do listen to that because they will have lots of things that they have to do, checks and things, once you have submitted. Once we've got your UCAS application, there are some additional forms that we send which just ask for a little bit more detail about you, and they come out very soon after the UCAS application, and you have about a week to fill those in. And then we get to step 7, which is the one that people tend to worry about, interviews, which are normally in early December. I really love the interview period that we have. We get to spend some time talking about some stuff that is interesting to all of us. And it should be an experience that actually allows you to think about something that is of interest to you. We don't tend to be very interested in the stuff that you know already. That's not terribly interesting to us. So you might find that you know something and we kind of move you on from that quite quickly. But that's really because we want to see how you work when you're at the edge of what you know, and when you're learning new things, how you work with us in that process. And those interviews will be generally 2 interviews, each with 2 people, and they'll cover a range of subjects. And then once all of that happens, we have decisions and they come out to you in January. So that's kind of the process. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that if they come up in the Q&A as well. Oh. Now, that is the end of my slides. I need to stop sharing. I couldn't find the button. So I'm just going to stop sharing and check nothing in the Q&A at the moment. So Liz, I will hand over to you if that's okay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jo. So I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about veterinary medicine at Cambridge. And I guess what I would start by saying, because I'm obviously aware that it's a topic of great interest on things like the student room, is the position at the veterinary school at the moment. And what I would stress is that the university is taking applications for this year, which was a huge vote of confidence from the Central University in the veterinary medicine course at Cambridge, and an awful lot of work is being done to secure the vet school. course, and there's a lot of information about that on the Central University pages. So why do I think the veterinary medicine course at Cambridge is so good? Well, I think there's a number of things. The course taught centrally at the university is being taught in a world-class scientific environment. It's a very practical course. We're obviously one of the veterinary courses that has access to a hospital for the clinical course. The fact that the overall student numbers are small centrally, but also in particular the fact that the students are split out amongst a large number of colleges mean that you get an awful lot of individual attention both at faculty and at college level. And we have absolutely excellent graduate outcomes for our graduates, whatever field of veterinary medicine they want to go into, whether they want a very scientific veterinary medicine career or whether they want a much more practical first opinion career. What I would absolutely emphasise is that the financial support available to students in Cambridge is by and large, I think, unparalleled at other veterinary schools. We've been teaching for a very, very long time in Cambridge, and I guess what makes our course very unique is this traditional split into the basic veterinary sciences and then the teaching of that in the small group supervisions in college, where you get an opportunity to really explore a subject in depth, which is a lot of fun, I think. And I mean, I certainly find it fun, which is why I still teach pathology in small groups after many decades of doing this. And every year it's interesting and exciting from my perspective as the person teaching it. The third year gives you an opportunity to really explore your subject of interest. So Elise mentioned that she's doing pathology, and I was delighted to note that, in fact, most of my vet students have chosen to do pathology for their third year this year, which I think is brilliant, and I don't bring any bias to that at all, I can assure you. But in the past, we've had people do education, we've had people do anthropology, so you can really choose from a wide variety of subjects, some of which are scientific and some of which allow you to explore a particular interest of yours in a lot more depth. So we have a very practical focus in the course, looking at animal handling and husbandry. You're taught the basic introductions to clinical examination, even through your first couple of years. You get sessions timetabled up at the vet school. You use the clinical skills centre to learn some of your new skills, and you get exposed to a wide variety of animal species, both from a practical learning perspective and from a handling perspective. And then your final year is a really, really practical, hands-on, clinic-based year, which I think everyone enjoys very, very much indeed. It gives you the opportunity to study to be a vet at one of the top scientific universities in the world. And this scientific underpinning means that you leave the course here with a really thorough understanding of disease processes, of normal physiology and anatomy, all of which stand you in incredibly good stead throughout your career, whatever direction that career subsequently takes. Around 60% of your course you will be taught just with your veterinary students, around 20% you'll be taught jointly with medical students. And the bit that I actually think is really nice is 20% you're taught with medical students or with natural scientists. So you're learning with a cohort of students who have very different learning experiences to you, and that combination tends to create some quite interesting teaching sessions. And when we look at what our students feel about particularly the intercalation in their third year, it's great to see that sort of 60% of them feel that it's incredibly useful in their future career. So what about the Cambridge experience? I mean, I feel this is slightly like false advertising because we don't get enough snow to build something quite this magnificent absolutely every year, but on rare occasion we do. The opportunity to live in a college hub for 3 years is absolutely brilliant. You'll make a really varied group of friends, varied from a social perspective, varied from a subject perspective. Sometimes it's quite nice to hang out with people who aren't doing your subject, and this gives you a great opportunity for that. We have a really lovely city here in Cambridge. Even Homerton is not that far from the vet school by bike, or there's a bus that goes directly out from outside Homerton over to the vet school, although it is very definitely an advantage if you can cycle. And as Joe alluded to, there's huge opportunities for sport, music, and facilities for pretty much anything. Either directly at a college level, we have some of the best sports grounds in of any of the colleges, but also at a university level as well. So we run a teaching hospital system for our clinical training rather than the model used by a number of vet schools of a distributed system. And this means that it is incredibly supportive. There's the opportunity for longitudinal mentoring and development of a sort of very nice social atmosphere. And it means that the course is very accountable and carefully monitored in terms of the teaching that goes on. So what about you as an individual? Across the course as a whole, there'll be around 70 to 75 students in a lecture, which compared to some of the courses, for example, medicine, where we have 300, is obviously relatively small. But the small supervision groups that you will have in a college will be between 2 and 4 students for most subjects. And you'll have one supervision each week for each of your main subjects. So in the first year, that will be the veterinary anatomy and physiology, the homeostasis, and the molecules in medical science. The dissection in the clinical groups are small, from preclinical right the way through to your clinical rotations, and this gives you the opportunity to have more case exposure, so you're able to be taught and treated very much as an individual. All of the fact that we have most of this on site in Cambridge means that your travel costs are markedly reduced, and you're not as isolated in later years by working somewhere with fewer colleagues. It is an extra year because of the intercalated year, but the financial support available in Cambridge more than offsets that increase of the extra year. It's as universities go, particularly because accommodation is provided in the colleges, it is relatively inexpensive compared to many of the other university. And the bursary scheme that we have here across all of Cambridge, regardless of which college you are applying to, covers you for the whole 6 years. So if that's something that you would want to know more about, there's a lot of information on the university website, or if you contact our admissions office, they can provide you with additional information about this. And we do have funds available in college for individuals who run into particular hardship or for particular activities. We also provide financial support for your EMS studies as well. And we've used, for example, the same fund that we fund our medical students' electives with, we've used to fund some of our students to go and do EMS in some really exotic locations such as Central America, or someone went on safari to Africa. So we're really keen to support you to make sure that you are able to take advantage of the huge opportunities that exist for you. So what about a broad overview of the course structure? So I am responsible for students at Homerton in the preclinical part of the course, which is your Vet ST1A, where you then take your first, second Vet MB exams, your Vet ST1B and your second Vet MB exams. Then your part 2 subject, where if you do something in the biological science field, I will be responsible for you. If you go and do something like education, then you would get a new Director of Studies for that. At the end of your 3rd year, you take your BA honours degree with your non-veterinary colleagues, and then you do years 4 to 6, which is your clinical course, and you get your Vet MB alongside your registration with the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. The first year of the course really covers normal biochemistry, physiology, and anatomy in huge detail. So molecules in medical science is effectively biochemistry, where we think about all the different molecules that make up your cells, how they are produced, how they are broken down, how this can go wrong slightly. We also focus on genetics and cell signaling pathways. In homeostasis, we think at more of an organism level. So we think about processes like respiration, muscle contraction, and endocrinology and hormones, and we think very much about how those systems adapt in the normal setting. So, you know, what happens to an animal that's starting at sea level and walking up a mountain, for example, what will happen to their respiration, what will happen to their blood cell production. And both of these subjects are delivered through primarily a series of lectures with interspersed practicals. Veterinary anatomy and physiology has lectures and practicals as well, but also very important dissection classes where not only are you really getting a great opportunity to appreciate anatomy in 3D, but you're very much starting to learn the manual dexterity that you would need to be able to undertake surgery as a veterinary surgeon. We also, alongside these three main core subjects, teach you with the skills that you need to think about research, so understanding epidemiology, how to interpret data that has been put in a paper, so you can decide if the data is of high enough quality for you to change your clinical practice. And before you go on your extramurals, before you start the extramural studies component of your preclinical course, you have to pass your Principles of Animal Management course, and this is where you learn how to handle different animal species. There's a really major hands-on component to this where you get signed off for the major animal species groups, and it's a great opportunity to visit the vet school. In the second year of the course, we start to think about things that have perhaps not gone about what happens when things go slightly wrong. So we do pathology or biology of disease. We start thinking about neurobiology and animal behavior. We think about how we can start to correct physiological problems using drugs. And you will also start to learn about more different species in comparative vertebrate biology. And you will do a reproductive biology course as well. And alongside this, there's a really interesting course which talks about various aspects of preparing for veterinary practice, including things like ethics of practice, for example. And one of the things that we emphasize throughout the course is the concept of One Health, how the human and animal health in many of the settings that we're thinking about are really closely interfaced together. And in my own subject, pathology, we do a lot of work on things like tuberculosis, where again, there's a huge overlap between human and animal health needs. As I say, after you've done the first 2 years and you've passed all of your vet second MB exams, you then get the opportunity to do a real smorgasbord of potential subjects in your part 2. I've focused on the very traditional science options here. Zoology and pathology are the two which are usually most popular with our veterinary students. But I have had people do geography or education before now. So whatever you're interested in doing, I will support you to make the switch to a different department if you wish for your part 2 year. The lectures, practicals, dissection that I've sort of talked about is all delivered by the university. We as a college deliver your supervisions, and we also support you with your extramural studies. So I think at this point I hand over to Rachel, but I will move the slides as they're on my
Amazing. Thank you so much, Liz. That was really, really comprehensive. So I like to think Liz and I are a little dream team. So with the EMS, you will get a vet school clinical supervisor. Now, this is something that's unique to Cambridge. The other thing that's unique to Cambridge is we're currently the only university to offer any sort of financial support for your EMS. So extramural studies are a really, really important way for you to develop a lot of the sense of professionalism that's involved in veterinary. So a lot of the actual sort of experiencing day-to-day life of a vet, what do different vets do, actually seeing real life cases, which for the Cambridge course I think is fantastic, especially because we have this preclinical clinical split. So you'll have a really solid foundation in science, and you'll also have the opportunity to still go on EMS and be like, oh, this is going to be me one day, I'm going to be a vet, and it allows you to sort of try on different outfits, if you will, of veterinary. So you'll do 12 weeks preclinical. So this is strictly non-clinical. It's just to kind of get everyone up to speed, because everyone will come from really different backgrounds. Like a lot of people will come from a farming background, but have never touched a horse, for example, or people who are from inner city may not have seen any lambing before, for example, or someone might be, you know, from a family that does falconry but has never owned a dog. So it's just to sort of open up this really broad, really diverse range of experiences that you can have and build your competency with just handling animals, which sounds a bit basic, doesn't it? But understanding, you know, what is the difference between indoor and outdoor housing with pigs, and what is the difference between dairy and beef cattle, for example. So you have the opportunity to do farm animal species, equine, lambing, small animals, and then you get 2 weeks to do as you please. So we had someone who was interested in going to a falcon rehabilitation centre, for example, someone who's interested in going to Red Deer Park. You know, the world's your oyster. Equally, if you're like, I know from day one that I'm going to be a pig vet, you can spend your additional 2 weeks doing pigs, for example. Onto your clinical EMS, you will basically pursue your own interests alongside making sure that you have this sort of omni-competence, as we call it. So really nice thing about the Cambridge course and all the UK based courses, actually, it tends to be more of a mainland European thing where you sort of track and specialize. You will qualify able to go into any species which interests you, which is brilliant, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But your clinical EMS will be from your 4th, 5th and 6th year. So whenever you come to the dark side, come out with me to the vet department, and you'll get to have the opportunity to, for example, practice a lot of the basic clinical skills like suturing, taking blood samples, taking and reading radiographs, for example. And as I said, we do have, as a university, every student will get paid to do their EMS, which is a really brilliant sort of widening participation method. And also, as Liz said, we have had students go. We had 2 of our fabulous final years who've just qualified as vets, as members of Royal College. One of them went to a sloth conservation project in Costa Rica, and the other one did a safari placement. So the college is really, really keen to support whatever passions people have. We also provide grant funding and support for things like people who are keen to get publications, for example. So we can go next slide, please, assistant, my glamorous assistant. So yeah, I'll chat you through a little bit about the clinical course. So basically, the clinical course seeks to put everything that you've learned in your physiology, pathology, HOMBOD, all the different acronyms that there are, into practice. Okay, so we have this really nice system of sort of integrated body systems and basic medicine. There is a lot of sort of transferable interdisciplinary things which you'll learn in the vet course, but there's also a whole host of very species specific things which we need to cover. So I won't read you out this entire list, but this is basically what you will cover in your 4th year. And then we can go next slide again. And then 5th year, you'll cover a little bit more of this sort of integrated body systems with a few more specific topics. The other thing that 5th year will expose you to, 4th year a little bit, but 5th year much more so, is things like OSCEs, so these observed specific clinical skills which you need to have. For example, glove it. I don't know if any of you have sort of seen much placement yet, but things like getting really comfortable, like how do I put sterile gloves on, you know, and you get taught that in the clinical skills lab, which is really, really nice. It's staffed by people who have a whole remit of sort of postgraduate teaching qualifications. So they are people who genuinely want to teach you, are very qualified to teach you, and are very competent teachers, rather than just being, oh, a really good nurse or a really good vet. They're people who, yes, are really good vets and nurses, but also love teaching. So you'll have the opportunity to learn things like cannulating, so putting sort of lines in, peripheral lines in, gloving, sterile prep, suturing before you have the stress of ever doing that on a real life animal. And then, yes, you'll also cover aspects such as practice and business management, which is sort of increasing importance within the veterinary curriculum. We can go next slide. And then 6th year, you won't have to attend a single lecture. So 5 years through, you will not have to sit in a lecture hall. You'll rotate through anesthesia, so that is interdisciplinary. So it is a large small animal focus, but also equine medicine, exotics. The farm department are fantastic, and they do a lot of surgery as well. Equine studies, so that'll be a sort of amalgam of medicine, surgery, general practice. So you'll go out and about on the roads. With our lovely ambulatory team, you will spend time in the hospital looking at referral caseloads as well. Some of those will be externally referred in. For example, we have a specialist equine oncologist, so she'll get cases in from sort of all around the UK, but we'll also have a lot of in-house referrals. So, for example, if somebody's seen a colic, some of you may be familiar with that term, sort of severe GI upset in a horse out on the road that needs surgery, you know, there is an equine hospital that they can come into. Farm animal studies, we're very lucky to have several what are called diplomats, so specialists in farm animals. So they do a lot of surgeries, everything from tooth extractions in alpacas through to sort of C-sections in cattle, the sort of bread and butter of farm animal surgery. We have a great radiology department staffed by radiographers. So some of them are actually human medics and human nurses who've joined us on the veterinary side, and then specialist imagers as well. So we have an MRI unit, a CT unit, so you get exposure to the whole remit of imaging modalities. Small Animal Hospital is staffed by exceptionally lovely people, I have to say, and you will cycle through sort of medicine, oncology, clinical pathology, anatomical pathology and neurology, as well as surgery. You will do an elective study and an elective project during that time, but you don't need to worry about that until 6th year. But say you're incredibly passionate about sport horse medicine, for example, and that's what you want to go into, the elective and your research project in final year is a really good opportunity to, for example, get publications. So I supervised 2 students last year who both did really fantastic projects in donkey welfare, who are both hoping to get those published. So loads of really exciting opportunities in the hospital. I have to say we do have a really friendly, fun hospital. Being a small number of vets per year, you do get much more sort of engagement, case discussion, much more case autonomy. You won't be sort of rushed off your feet all day, every day. That picture on the slide where a horse reading the book are 2 of our final years 2 years ago. And that's, yeah, a real favourite picture of mine with Bob the Cob. So yeah, you do get time to really get to know your students, really get to know your cases, and it just affords you guys a little bit more of a sort of personalised learning experience. So next slide, lovely Liz. So I'm sure you guys are sort of aware, if you're interested in going down the veterinary route, there are loads and loads of things you could do as a clinical vet. So I myself worked in horses, was always a big pony girl, but the joy of having a sort of omnicompetent degree means that you can go on to do everything. So I've sort of transferred out to exotics. Farm animal presents one of the sort of smaller remits of practice. Small animal certainly is sort of our modal group of practice, and you do of course get mixed practice vets, so sort of tends to be more geographical now. But outside of that, I mean, you can see from that top pie chart, we do have a lot of vets who aren't in clinical practice, and that's okay too. You don't have to be a vet who puts gloves on every day to be a vet. You'll get a lot of people working in industry, so typically sort of pharmaceuticals and practical things, like it's kind of easier to get home office licensing and things whenever you're a vet. So a lot of people do go into industry, pharmaceuticals and research. The Cambridge course gives you a really, really solid basis if you do want to sort of springboard into academia, especially with that intercalated degree, which Liz was talking about, and the opportunity to undertake either lab-based research or do a dissertation in something you're really passionate about, for example. I work for a charity now, I have done in the past. A lot of our vets go into sort of exotic specialism, zoo work. A lot of people go into government, for example, so either working as a clinician within government or in policy. And then there's a whole host of sort of weird and wonderful things that you may not even think vets do, like working at sort of border control. Yeah, I'm sure there's loads of others, scientific writing, medical writing. So if you're wondering whether the Cambridge course is for you, I would really sort of reiterate what Liz has said, that there's a really strong basic science element, and we call it basic science not because it's easy, but because it's the fundamental of everything that you're going to springboard off later, everything that you're going to kind of spiral curriculum out from, everything you're going to develop from. You will spend a lot of time in lecture theatres, you will spend a lot of time in labs, and there are a lot of assessments. But with that, you get this really strong scientific basis. You get a really fun intercalation year where you can be, one of my clinical students did his final year, or sorry, his intercalation dissertation looking at ecology of wolves, for example, which is pretty awesome if you ask me. And you do also get loads of contact with animals in the EMS and the practical animal management. So we're really lucky. Our farm team have dairy herd, sheep herd. Tell I didn't do farm animal practice, a herd of sheep. And we have teaching cows as well, who are really, really sort of friendly little cows who let you put halters on them and check their feet and things. We also have a huge herd of teaching horses, the vast majority of whom have been recruited because they, A, are very affable, and B, have something wrong with them, typically cardiac issues. So it gives you a really good opportunity to sort of learn what's normal and learn what's abnormal without being faced with an owner. We do have fantastic financial support, and I do think that, you know, that's something a lot of us feel very passionately about. The small number of clinical students and clinical attachments based in Cambridge can make it a really fun and secure way to practice. So I think I've sort of covered a lot of these things. So yeah, whatever your interest, there will be a supervisor, essentially. Central teaching is great, but you do still have this sort of independent nidus of support within the college, which I think is fantastic. It just means you have a myriad of people to support you throughout.
I think one question people often ask is about how you choose the college, and I think sometimes you just come and visit the colleges and one feels more right than another. And my real thought on this, after having been here for quite a while, is that one of the biggest differences is between the feel of a smaller college and the feel of a larger college. And I think there are pros and cons for both. There's a real, in smaller colleges, there's a real kind of drive to be involved, because the only way you can get a football team out or whatever is if pretty much everyone is playing, whereas the larger college often comes with more opportunities and more things that you can do actually in the college. But you know, if you really don't know, then putting in an open application is absolutely fine. And as the person who looks at all the applications, I don't actually know whether you put in an open application or whether you chose to apply directly to Homerton. So it does not influence our thinking at all when you've applied. Why Homerton in particular? Well, we have a very strong fellowship in medicine and veterinary medicine, and there's myself and Rachel. We've also recently been joined by the fantastic Alison McGraw, who teaches some of the subjects, supervises some veterinary subjects for us, and is a small animal first opinion practice clinician who's recently started working at the vet school. So we now have 2 clinical vets on our fellowship, which is brilliant. All our vet students have the same tutor, who is John Phelan, who is a philosopher but is absolutely passionate about horse riding and regularly rides out over in Newmarket. So is practically an honorary vet. And then Julia Kenyon, who is a scientific virologist, who is our preclinical medicine DOS, contributes hugely to the vet life as well. And Karen Chadder, who is an ICU doctor, teaches the homeostasis for all of our medic and vet students. So applying to Cambridge, the ESAT test, the Engineering and Science Admissions test that Joe mentioned, is the test that you do alongside submitting your UCAS form. The 2 key dates, this is all on the university website, are the 8th of September deadline for anyone who has access requirements, and 29th of September deadline for individuals who don't have access requirements. The exam itself is running on the 9th and 10th of October. What I absolutely stress is that the outcome of that test is only one part of all the information that we use when we make a decision. We have your information in the personal statement. We have your reference from your school. We have your GCSE or equivalent results, which we interpret in a way that's very contextualized for your school. So we have all the information that we need about the school that you did your GCSEs at, and we also have the information from interview if you're invited for interview, and we interview a very, very high proportion of our applicants, and all of that information is used together. We know that the interview can be quite a stressful experience, so we very much take account of that. On your personal statement, the advice that I give is to really personalise the material that you put on there. So I'm really interested in what you've taken from what you did, what skills you think it brings forward into the veterinary sphere, what you've learnt from your work experience that you've done. And the things that I'm really looking for in a student are, I'm looking for someone who takes the initiative, who shows me that they're very determined, that they have an interest in science, they're passionate and enthusiastic about veterinary medicine, they're showing independence, they show evidence of overcoming challenges. And if you think about all the different things that you do, actually, it's quite simple to evidence many of these things. So, for instance, if you have regularly played in a sport team, then you're showing me things like team working, you're showing that you're reliable because you've turned up every week, you've shown that you're enthusiastic about something, you've shown that you've got interest, you've shown that you're working independently. So all of these things can be really simply evidenced if you actually tell us on your personal statement what you've got out of doing different things, rather than just writing them down as flat statements. The interview itself, and I will go very quickly through an example question in a minute, is not so much about knowledge, but it's more about showing me that you can apply things, you can learn. Because if you don't know things, I can teach you them. But what I need to know is that you're teachable, that you're keen to learn, that you listen to me when I start to try and teach you, and that you can take concepts that you are familiar with and manipulate them in a situation which is unfamiliar. So in order to make that unfamiliar situation, you can expect the questions to take you slightly out of your comfort zone. But the key is to absolutely embrace the challenge and work with us if we try to sort of coach you through the example that we're giving you. If we make an offer, the routine offer for veterinary medicine, if you're doing A levels, is A star AA, and the A star would be in a science subject or maths. So very briefly, an example of a question that I used a couple of years ago at the interview. I started by giving people this particular molecule and asking what sort of basic structure this was. Most people worked out that this was an amino acid, and we then talked a bit about how you would join them together. So we talked about the various bonding that you would get between the NH2 and the COOH. We then talked about the impact that the different R groups might have on how the simple sequence would then rearrange into its secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structures. We then talked about these structural diagrams, and we reflected that the green was alpha helix and the blue was beta pleated sheet, and that molecule A clearly had a lot of alpha helix and molecule B clearly had a lot of beta pleated sheet. And we then explored the fact that these are actually the same molecule. Molecule A is the healthy version of this molecule, and molecule B is the unhealthy version. And we talked about how changing alpha helix to beta pleated sheet might lead to a molecule causing disease. So we thought about, people came up with brilliant suggestions, such as if it was an enzyme, it might change the shape of the active site. If it was a structural protein, it might mean that it doesn't hold together as you would expect it to. And if it was a ligand, it might not bind to its receptor anymore. If it was a receptor, it might no longer have its downstream signaling. Really fantastic suggestions, none of which were correct, but all were brilliant suggestions. The actual answer is that it stops the protein being degraded. So instead of breaking it down when you no longer need it, you start to accumulate it. And when you start to accumulate, it accumulates in your tissues. In particular, this protein accumulates in your brain. And we then looked at some numbers. So these were the numbers of cases of disease caused by this particular protein in animals and in humans, and the years that we counted those numbers. And I got people to sort of visualize what the graph of this might look like. So without plotting it accurately, you get approximately a bell-shaped curve. And if you look at the peak of your bell-shaped curve, it's in about 1992 for animal species, and it is in about 2000 for humans. And we talked about what that might mean. So does this mean that the animal disease is causing the human disease? If it is causing it, what does the fact that the two peaks are separated by 8 years mean? What's the significance of that? And we talked about possible latency periods, etc. And at no point did people actually need to know anything about the disease at all. In fact, we didn't put a name on the particular disease. What I was looking for was whether people could interpret patterns in numerical data, whether people could think about how protein structure might affect function. All sorts of concepts that you've covered in A level, but just applying them in a slightly unfamiliar scenario. So here are a couple of Rachel's adorable little patients, and I will finish there.
Thank you, Liz. Rachel, I think Rachel is going to share something else. Am I right, Rachel?
Yeah,
Oh, you've muted.
do we have time to go through a sort of little case-based scenario?
Yeah, I think probably we do have time, as long as we don't take too long on it, because I want to leave some time for questions. But absolutely, it's a valuable thing to do.
Brilliant. Okay, guys.
I think it'd be a great idea to do, but also people can start popping questions in the Q&A if they've got any.
That will be brilliant. So I'm going to attempt to show you guys this. Can you guys all see that?
Yeah, can see that fine.
Yeah, brilliant. So guys who are joining us, and also my lovely fellow panelists, if you haven't used Mentimeter before, you basically want to go and you can use your phone, you can use your laptop. It's called menti.com, and if you put that code in, it's 6730-4620. And it just makes this much more fun, much more interactive. I get bored of the sound of my own voice. I'm sure you will as well. So if you can all just log on, it just makes it a little bit more fun and interactive. And if you can give me a little thumbs up when you've logged on, great. That's 1, 2, fab, 3. Here we go. Lovely. And if anyone has any 4, fab. If anyone has any problems, 5, lovely. And wants me to post a link in the group chat, if you could just post on there. So I'm going to chat you through sort of, this is a format that I tend to do a lot of clinical teaching in, which is case-based scenarios. So it's kind of just to make it a little bit more real for you. So this is one of our lovely common seals that we have in at the minute at the centre. So typically these sort of case-based scenarios, please don't feel intimidated by this. I appreciate this is the first time you've seen it, but so you are presented with a 2-week-old seal pup with severe coughing. So this is little Rumble, one of this year's first common seal pups to come in. I appreciate some of you might not have seen them up close before. They tend to have this little mask that they wear because they have such a high level of lacrimation or tear production. So it's quite a good way to assess whether they're dehydrated or not. So this is little Rumble, and lung disease is really, really common in seal pups, especially in our common seals. So unfortunately, that's all the history you get. Typically, case-based teaching with small animal, you'll get sort of how long the owners owned it, is it vaccinated, where do they walk it, what do they feed it, what are its previous health conditions. With wildlife, typically we just get something rocking up to the door. So you should all have access to a little word cloud. So what problems might severe coughing cause, or what might it be a symptom of? So, like Liz said, we do a lot of sort of interdisciplinary things. We do a lot of cross-species work as well. So, you can think about yourself. Yeah, fab. What sort of things you've maybe had that have caused cough before, if you've seen any clinical practice at all, if you've done any sort of placements for applying for vet school, have you seen any dogs coughing, for example? Bearing in mind, seals are basically just little dogs of the sea. And what problems might it lead to? Why is it a problem that little Rumble has? Yeah, fab, some great answers coming in already. What problem, why is it a problem that this baby seal or seal pup, if you will, is coughing? So I'll just give our other participants a couple of minutes. So again, in the sort of group-based teaching, it's a really safe learning space. It's very much somewhere that there's no such thing as a silly suggestion, silly question, silly answers. It's just the opportunity for you to explore different ways of thinking. So yeah, absolutely. Airway infection is a big one. So typically what we call our sort of pathogenic agents are going to be viruses. Absolutely. So seals do also get pollution. Very good. And do also get things like Bordetella, like you might have seen dogs be vaccinated for, kennel cough. They also can get distemper. Bacterial infections are a really big one. And parasitic infections as well. Fungal disease is pretty rare. But yes, certainly with our infections. Foreign bodies, absolutely really common in things like cats, really common in things like dogs. Irritation, very common in horses, where they can get equine asthmatic syndrome. Certainly global warming and pollution do put a lot of stresses and strains on our free living friends. So brilliant, great answers, guys. So the initial clinical exam, so you can see here little Rumble's eyes are now quite dry. If you compare him to the first image, he's lost that little bandit mask. You can also see he's got what we call sort of a hump-based stance. So he's got that real curve in his back. That tends to be a sign of discomfort. You can also see how thin he is. I appreciate you probably haven't seen many seal pups, but you can see that real dip in his back as well. You can assess his demeanor sort of from a distance, and you can take a respiratory rate. So we'll do a lot of things hands off on our animals before we get involved with things like stethoscopes. So certainly we will then take a heart rate. We'll have a listen to the lungs. We'll have a listen for things like crackles, which tends to be indicative of fluid on the lungs, wheezes, which is more associated with something called bronchoconstriction. So you might have heard the term bronchioles in your biology teaching, for example. So bronchoconstriction tends to be caused by that irritation, which someone very astutely put as a cause of coughing. So it tends to be allergic airway disease or reactive airway disease as well. We can take a temperature and we can do more invasive things like taking bloods to look for signs of infection, signs of dehydration as well. So poor little Rumble does have pneumonia, and pneumonia is basically infection of the lungs and the lining of the lungs. So what sort of things do you think will cause pneumonia in a seal pup? Again, this is very much not because I expect you to know anything about seal pups, but just sort of as a barometer of sort of your clinical thinking, your clinical reasoning. So this is the sort of thing we might ask you in either supervision, in which case it might be content you've covered already, or things like interview questions where we might, yeah, great, where we might give you a scenario which you haven't encountered before to see what you're thinking. So what else, what might cause pneumonia in a person or a dog? or a horse or a sheep. Yeah, great, brilliant, fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. Any other thoughts? Great. So certainly, yeah, fabulous. So yeah, so food particles, so sort of aspirated food, you do occasionally get pups with things like cleft palate, where they have a gap between sort of their hard palates. So whenever they're sucking in milk, it can get up into their airways. So definitely, yeah. Viruses, absolutely. As I said, sort of Bordetella and distemper are present bacteria, absolutely. Carcinogens, that's an interesting one. Yeah, we would typically see so carcinogens, for anyone who doesn't know, are things which cause or have the potential to cause cancer. So that would typically be more older animals. Water pollution, water temperatures, yeah, absolutely. You know, those sort of stresses potentially, again, would maybe expect to see it. Yeah, malnutrition, brilliant. Would maybe expect to see it more in our older animals. So certainly malnutrition and a lack of sort of maternal antibodies, which might be a term that's familiar to some of you, will leave your animals slightly more vulnerable. And bacteria and viruses, certainly. So poor little Rumble, actually, I've taken out some quite gruesome slides of some some seal parasites. So little Rumble had a pretty bad lung infection, so by a parasite called Otostrongylus circumscripta. Again, nothing I would ever expect you guys to know, absolutely not. But it's a really large parasite that can cause obstruction, and then concurrent infection with something called paraphloroides, which are smaller and clog up the airways. So on top of that, he has a bacterial infection. So he's basically got a really heavy worm burden. He's malnourished. He's hypothermic, so he's too cold, and he's got a bacterial infection. So what sort of treatments do you think? Yeah, brilliant. Anything else maybe you've seen in practice for young animals who have these really nasty sort of worm and bacterial infections? Anything else maybe you've seen in cats or dogs? Yeah, I'll give you a little minute. Brilliant. Brilliant. Great job, guys. So yeah, certainly medicines to kill parasites and dewormers. So sometimes call them dewormers or anthelminthics. Antibiotics, definitely. Yeah. Antibodies is an interesting one. Yeah. So certainly often in sick foals, we will give things like plasma transfusions. So I wonder, has someone said that because I said about lack of maternal antibodies? So yeah, great thinking there. Really, really brilliant. Isolation, yeah, I love that someone's written that. Certainly, we don't necessarily examine entire viral profiles for these animals, so they may well have infectious viruses which need really good biosecurity. But certainly, if he's coughing and coughing and coughing up sort of pussy content, then we absolutely want to isolate them, don't we? Injectable medicines, yeah, absolutely. So things like our antibiotics and our anthelminthics and change the atmosphere, absolutely. So keep him in a nice sort of isolated cubicle. So here he is. Here's little Rubble on the left and little Monopoly on the right. We name all our seals thematically. So worming we do when they're strong enough. So if you remember, I said that one of the worms is really large. So the Otostrongylus are really large. So they need to be strong enough to actually cough them up when they're dead. We do give antibiotics for secondary bacterial infections, so the parasites really undermine the integrity of those lung linings, allowing for bacteria to sneak in there. We use evidence-based nutrition, so we make sure that we try and substitute what they would get in nature. Sadly, we're not as good as seal mums, who have the highest fat content of any milk in the world. But we certainly do our best to be surrogate parents in that respect. Good nursing and husbandry. So as you said, isolation. So these two seals went in together because they were found on the same beach with the same symptoms. So likely exposed to the same pathogens. It's also really, really good for their mental well-being, as you can see, very cute, to get to spend time together. We can also use something called nebulizing, which is basically steam therapy, just to try and clear out some of the mucus. So Really, really well done, guys. That is kind of an example. This is one of our older grey seals who is ready for release. So that is just to give you a little idea of the sort of clinical setup, the sort of run through, the sort of questions that we might ask, and the sort of way that we might navigate through it. So you'll get a lot of prompts, a lot of questions, a lot of encouragement, and just really trying to engage you fully with the whole process. So that was really great, guys. I'm really, really impressed. I really hope to see some of you at interview. Just going to stop my sharing there. So that's just to give you a little bit of a taster of how these sort of case-based scenarios tend to run. So I will defer back to my lovely panelists. And yeah, if anyone has any questions at all about any aspects of anything we've discussed, if you want to know more about EMS, if you want to ask Elise any questions about sort of her student experience, any vet specific questions, or any questions about the preclinical course, then definitely Joanna and Liz are in a great place to answer. And yeah, just fire away, guys. We would love to hear what you guys are thinking. So
while we're waiting to see if there are any questions, Elise, do you want to just talk a little bit about your experience at Homerton?
Yeah, of course. So I highly recommend Homerton. I'll start with that. I can't imagine myself being at any other college. The support I've received, especially from Liz and Rachel, and my tutor John, has been incredible all throughout. So I definitely recommend Homerton on that front. I think in terms of kind of the social side and that aspect, it's also very, very strong. I've been involved with a lot of different things within college. I was the disability officer last year as a member of the student union within Homerton, so something similar to what Joanna mentioned. So I helped just make sure everything's running smoothly in terms of disabilities while speaking to college and all that kind of stuff. So very fun. I also helped out on the May Ball committee. So this is a big event we hold every year or every other year now. So it's at the end of the year, it's like a big party basically. And I was the design officer for that. So I got to make a lot of different like decorations. I personally managed a group of 5 or 6 other students to organize everything. So I learnt a lot of important skills there, and I met a lot of new people. I also cox. So this is a role in rowing where you're the person kind of steering the boat and telling the rowers what to do. So I started that last year in my first term. So that was very, very fun because I'd never really interacted too much with it before, despite being at the college for a couple of years at that point. So loved getting that experience as well, just kind of doing something a little bit different. And I'm also on the committee this year for the boat club, so I'm the treasurer. So that's a lot of things I've done within Homerton. Most of that was last year. You don't have to do that much, or you can do even more. It's completely up to you. And what else is great about Homerton? The people are great. The grounds are great. We've got a very nice orchard. So we grow our own apples, we make our own cider, we make our own juice. You can pick them on your own. So that's very nice. We've got a little football pitch actually in the college. It's not our official playing one, but a lot of people play for leisure there. And we've got a lot of different accommodation all throughout the college. So in first year, you're in a big block, like right as you enter college, and you're with all the other first years as well. So as Joanna mentioned, you will be often with 1 or 2 other vets. For me, there was only 1 other vet in my year at the start, so I was next to her and next to some theology students who study like religion, some history students, so a real variety on my corridor. And this just helps you really get to know kind of everyone in your year. Despite Homerton being on the bigger side of colleges, I think we're the second biggest next to Trinity College.
We're bigger than Trinity.
Are we in terms of undergrad? Okay, we are the biggest college.
We're also
in terms of undergrads and postgrads combined.
Okay.
We're also the only college that does every single subject, from Anglo-Saxon right the way through to zoology. I think what I would sort of say about numbers of vet students at Homerton is we we've only just graduated our first year of vet, so we're still very new in the veterinary medicine sphere within Cambridge. And the first few years, as Elise is alluding to, we had sort of 2 students per year. We've now gone up and we've got sort of 5 students in one year. We've got 4 in another. So we've sort of moved upwards, and we sort of make between 3 and 5 offers per year. So if you actually look at the number of vet students at Cambridge colleges, we've moved very rapidly from being down with the main pack, because 2 is pretty typical for most colleges, and we've actually accelerated ourselves right the way up to being one of the larger colleges in terms of vet student numbers. So we're in a growth mindset, I think it would be fair to say, in terms of our veterinary medicine offering. And we have a very sort of close relationship between the medics and vets. I mean, it happens quite naturally anyway, because a lot of your subject supervisions are shared, but also things like our subject dinner and things like that. We've really worked very hard to make everyone feel as like a whole community, partly because when it comes to the 3rd year and all your friends who've done history and geography and things like that disappear off, it's the medics and vets who remain behind for the full 6 years. So therefore getting the sort of structure between you all set up as a real network, I think provides a huge level of support when you go into your 4th year and suddenly all those people who were here with you previously have now gone.
And yeah, as I was saying, despite for Homerton being definitely on the bigger side, I quite comfortably can say I know probably 80 to 90% of people in my year, at least by name. I've had a conversation with most of them. And as Liz has said, I obviously know all the vets and all the medics, because we do our subject formals, so you get to know everyone from all the other years as well, both above and below you. You get to meet some academics who are affiliated with Homerton, and that's just generally a very, very nice night. Happens every February, I believe. So that's immediately what I can think of when I'm told to talk about Homerton. If there's any more specific questions, either from the panelists or from you guys, like, hit me. I'm paid to be here.
I think one of the things that it's quite useful just to get a feeling of is what that accommodation is like in the first year. So kind of, was it similar to what you expected, different to what you expected?
So I'd say I always think of the first year accommodation as it's very hotel-y, and that's not a bad thing. It's currently all being redone, so what I'm describing will be quite different to when students are actually coming, except the fact it will all be in the same block. But that it's all ensuite, which is definitely the best part, because it's also very, very affordable. So definitely in your first year you will get ensuite, and for most of the other years you're almost guaranteed ensuite, because that is the majority of our rooms. So it's very functional. It's got a desk, it's got a bed, you've got a bathroom, there's a lot of good storage. And as I said, it will change a lot by the time you guys are here. It's currently very I'm going to say 80s inspired. It's very red.
Windows on some floors currently, but it will have windows.
It will have windows. We can guarantee you will have a window. It's currently very red, but they're moving it to a much more modern style. So all the furniture is being redone. Kind of all the kitchens are being stripped and redone. So by the time you guys are here, it will be incredible accommodation. But I think because I came originally in 2022, I was kind of one of the COVID years, so I didn't get to see the college or the rooms or anything before, I think it was a week before I actually moved in. So it's definitely a different experience to what a lot of you guys will have, because you guys will be able to do the open days, have a look around and see what fits you. So I think for me, like, I would have genuinely been happy with anything. They could have put me in a broom closet and I would have taken it, because that's all I knew. But I think definitely have a look around. Go see Homerton. We give you tours. We'll show you into all the rooms and everything. So yeah, that's kind of what the first year accommodation is like.
So someone had asked about room sharing. So all the rooms are single. As you move up the college and you move into the final year, at the third year, you start to sort of move on to corridors. So you'll be sort of closer to a group of people, but your room, so you share a kitchen, etc. But your room is yours. If you stay in college accommodation years 4 to 6, those tend to be in flats. So there'll be 4 or 5 of you sharing a flat. So you'll have a communal kitchen and sort of seating area, and then you'll have your own bedroom. But it's not like some of the American dorms where you have 2 people sharing a room. Or
Yeah,
even
all very separate.
Murray Edwards, where I think they still have some shared rooms.
We've got another question about maths problems in the interviews. Hello, I'm not sure whether it's fine. It's fine to ask. Please ask any question. Do we get tested on any pure math problems in the interviews by any chance, or is it largely data interpretation?
So I don't think there's much gain for us in asking you a sort of really pure maths question, because what we're interested in is whether you can apply principles that you've learned. So the last few years I've done the maths question, and I've tended to do something that's focused much more on data interpretation, or like that question that I showed you, pattern recognition. So could you look at those two strings of data and, without spending ages computing it, spot that it goes up then down and the other goes up then down, but with a separation between them? So what I'm interested in is, if I give you something, can you look for trends? Can you look for patterns? Can you then manipulate it using techniques that you use? So occasionally I've asked a question which will then require you to know something about how to generate a particular form of equation, but I've always put it in the context of a clinical problem. So I wouldn't sort of give you some pure calculus and expect you to do that, not least because I probably would not know how to do it. So therefore, it's all about application. And I think even when I've been interviewing for medicine with someone who's been very mathematically based in their field, it has all been about application. It has not been about a here is a problem that we know you will have learned in maths. You might have had to generate a simultaneous equation to solve it, or you might have had to use some other technique that you've learned, but it would be a basic technique in a particular situation. But what I stress is that we take you through it. So if you can avoid that moment of panic, if you can start saying, well, I'm not sure, but I do know this. And so if I take this piece of data and I take that piece of data and I put them into this process that I know, this is what I'd get. If you start doing that and you start talking to us and telling us what you're doing, if you're going slightly in the wrong direction, that allows me to redirect you backwards. And if you show me in the redirection that you're listening to me, you're using the information that I'm giving you to rethink the way you're solving it, you're showing me that you're very teachable. And like I say, I'm less interested in what you already know, because if there are gaps in your knowledge, I can absolutely fill those gaps. What I'm interested in is whether you work with me to help those gaps become filled, or whether you ignore all the hints that I give you.
I think the same is true for the chemistry. Occasionally we have numbers within the kind of chemistry side of things, but they would be within a context and they wouldn't be asking you to do difficult maths on them. Okay, I think we'll just give people another minute or so to see if there's any other questions that pop up. I had another question, Lisa, that I was going to ask you, and now it's disappeared from my head.
Oh
no. What I would say is that, sometimes you don't think of questions until you're actually sat and you're going through thinking more deeply about the process of applying. And if that is the case, then if you contact our admissions office with your question, either if it's certainly if it's about the process, they will know far more about it far more accurately than we would. So they would help you directly. Or if it's more subject specific, they will pass it on to myself or Rachel to answer. So please don't think this is your only chance to ask anything. We really hope that you'll want to apply to Cambridge, but specifically, we really hope you'd want to apply to Homerton, and therefore it's in our interest to support you and help you with that process as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, lost my mouse now. Q&A.
Well,
Sorry, Liz.
I don't think there's anything else come up.
No.
So I think what we'll say is thank you all so much for attending and engaging really well with Rachel's question. That was brilliant. And we really hope that we get the opportunity to meet you at interview, and then definitely very much hope we get the opportunity to meet you here at Homerton. So thank you all so much for giving up your time during your holidays. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Rachel, Liz, Elise, for your time this evening as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, and good luck with all your applications. I know it's a stressful process, but
okay, I have to feel quite rude now and end the webinar because that's the only thing that can happen. So I'm going to do that. Bye.
Bye.